All right, thank you for being here. I'm Marley Boxer. I'm the Economic Development Coordinator, and I've interacted with you guys before. We appreciate you taking the time out of your days to interview with us, and thanks for being, accommodating of the weather that we had last week. Glad that we didn't have anything bad happen this week. So I'm going to go around and introduce our team, and then I'm going to turn it over to you guys to introduce yourselves to everyone, and then just get started with your presentation. If in your presentation, I'm not sure if you covered all the questions under the presentation section, or if you went further into the conversation questions or not. So, let us know how you have that all laid out, but then we'll move into those conversation questions. So, as I said, I'm Marley. This is David Berniker. He's our Community Development Director. This is Randy Lauer. This is the city's mayor. We've got Abe Farkas, our consultant, Tanny Staffinson, our Planning Commission Chair, and Jordan Wittrin, our Town Center Advisory Board Chair.
Great. I'll introduce myself, and then Josh and Kevin can introduce themselves. So my name is Michael Nagy. I'm Wood Partners Managing Director for the Pacific Northwest. So I'm in charge of our development operations for both Portland and Seattle and the greater metro areas. Prior to joining Wood Partners, I worked with another local developer called Holland Partner Group, and I opened the office for Wood Partners here 7 years ago.
Yeah, my name is Josh Floyd. I'm the SVP for property operations. So we operate all of the properties from the maintenance to leasing to resident engagement across the country. So my territory is Texas and West, so half of the United States. I've been with Wood for around 6 years, but I also worked with Holland as well. We have a similar background where I was in a similar role.
I'm Kevin Clark, Vice President of Development for the Portland market here. I work closely with Mike on all development projects here in Portland and the Portland region. I've been with Wood Partners for about 16 months. Prior to that, I worked with Summit Development Group and Urban Asset Advisors, two local developers here in Portland, on a variety of projects in Portland and in Gresham, in the surrounding area.
Well, we're excited to be here with you today. The way we organized our presentation was sort of a brief review of our background as a company, our vision for the site, and some visual images that we have to kind of represent kind of what our plan would look and feel like. From there, we put the questions on slides so that we can use them as a reference as we have this conversation. We also had some questions for the city. We have a slide with those if we want to get to those towards the end as well.
Great.
So at any point during this initial part, if you guys want to stop me with questions, feel free to. We didn't necessarily organize the first part to address all of the conversation questions. We wanted to leave that for later, but thought it'd be helpful to at least frame the conversation by going through our proposal again. So the title slide here, these are a few of the projects that Wood Partners has developed in the Portland area. I think we're really proud of the quality of projects that we've built here. The one that's most, I think, relevant to this, Alta Civic Station, if you know well, we're going to hit on that a little bit more, but definitely a project that has a ton of applicability to what we're all hoping to do here. Wood Partners is a national, vertically integrated, multifamily and mixed-use development company. Our motto is improving people's lives by creating better communities. We thought a lot about what our sort of mission statement is and what it should be again recently, and we actually decided to keep the same one that we've had for the last 10 years because really we see that as our function in our communities is to create great places for people to live, and by creating those great places for people to live and to work and to shop at, we feel like we're really improving the people's lives that are participating in those and the communities that we build in. We are quite a big company. We have 22 offices now in 20 states. As I mentioned, I opened the Portland office here 7 years ago. The company's been around for 25 years now. We've developed 80,000 apartments. We are owned by our roughly 30 partners, of which I'm one of them. And at this point, between construction, property management, development, and our back office functions, we have over 1,000 employees. This kind of shows our vertical integration. So as we mentioned, Kevin and I are focused on the development side of things. Josh runs property management for the Western US. We now manage over 20,000 units nationally, maybe a few more.
25,000, yeah.
So we are a really large-scale operator of properties. We also have in-house construction. So we're a general contractor. We build the majority of our projects ourselves. The exception being high-rise projects. We don't act as general contractor in those situations. The organization, though, has tremendous, I would say, support functions. We have dedicated asset managers. We have in-house legal, technology, HR. Our accounting department has over 20 CPAs. And we are extremely well-run institutional development company. These are our bios, which I will kind of skip since we've already introduced ourselves. Blake LaRue, who runs our construction division here locally, wasn't able to make it. He lives in East County as well, and it was in Estacada. And Josh, Kevin, and I all live in Northeast Portland, so we're all locals. We all come out here and know exactly what this site means and why it's important to be done right. And so we feel like we've got tremendous qualifications and background to be the development group here. So moving on to the site in specific, I guess to take a really high-level step back, we wanted to think about what should this site be before we started putting things on the paper. We wanted this site to be inviting to both Troutdale residents of the community, and visitors alike. We thought the key things to achieve in creating that would be dispersing parks, plazas, and green spaces throughout the site, making it a attractive, very livable, very pleasant place to be. Have thoughtful pedestrian and bicycle connections to the riverfront, to downtown, and to nearby adjacent commercial areas. You'll see our design really relies on an intuitive sort of Main Street design where you come in very strong kind of backbone central core with ample on-street parking, a roundabout that's oriented around the existing water tower feature, and sort of a mix of uses around that sort of Main Street, and then a commercial node that was really meant to draw visitors to the project and the park during all different hours. We feel like that's really important to see the vision of the city's park come to be best utilized, is to be able to bring daytime visitors there, and that commercial use is important to do that. This is what our site plan looks like from a really high level. You can see the Main Street sort of backbone there in yellow throughout the center of the site. We'll talk a little bit about our access and kind of what that might mean or how we might be able to adjust that. But you can see the dispersion of the green spaces, reinforcing the connection with the river, having building frontages oriented towards that riverfront park. We're definitely hoping to see some stronger connections to downtown Troutdale. We feel like it's important to not replace downtown Troutdale by recreating another retail Main Street. We really want it to be complementary to what's already there. And we feel like this design provides something different from what's already there and will reinforce those businesses and that business district in downtown that is there. One of the key things we already mentioned is the ample on-street parking. We feel like that's really important to be able to attract visitors consistently. People, if they've gone to a place a few times and can't find a parking spot, they usually give up on it. So having 150 on-street parking spaces and really making sure that we've adequately parked the commercial spaces is really key. The hospitality use that we'll dig in on a second, we feel like that makes sense to be towards the north end of the site, highly visible to people on I-84, and sort of goes along with our concept of what we think that hospitality user should look like. And then this master plan is a really good mix of building types and scales that allows for different housing unit typologies. So we have everything from studios, 1-bedrooms, to townhomes, live-work units, and something that we were successful doing at Alta Civic Station in Gresham is, we really want to have a unit for everybody. And I think having different mix of housing types, different types of buildings is really important to achieve that. We've also, have for sale ownership here in the townhomes. We're going to dig in a little bit more on that, I know, but that's, another way of diversifying the housing development that we'd be proposing to do here. This is what the concept looks like in 3D. The buildings in blue, those are your sort of mid-rise apartment buildings. They have retail or live-work functions primarily at the ground floor level. You can see they're colored in yellow. We're going to dig in a little bit more on kind of what the commercial uses look like. But you can see that sort of frontage towards the riverfront park we feel like is really important. The yellow standalone building is our commercial building, and that we see that being flexible to either being an office use or a retail use, hopefully both. Could be multi-story. We have some examples of what we think that might look like, but that is really going to be that node where people kind of know to come as a visitor, and it really kind of activates this neighborhood on a sort of more an 18-hour basis. The purple buildings are more of the low rise. You've got the 3-story apartments and the townhomes. And we feel like it's a really nice diversity of housing and scale as it steps down towards the retail to the west, and then the hospitality use there in pink. In total, we think this development program encompasses about 372 apartments, 35 townhomes, 150 hotel rooms, 13,000 square feet of retail and or commercial space, and almost 800 parking stalls. See, we've kept the water tower feature. We feel like our roundabout, sort of using that as a landmark, is a really clever way of utilizing it and giving everyone sort of a clear sort of sense of direction on how the circulation should be oriented. Digging a little bit deeper on the commercial areas, as I mentioned, we have both vertical mixed use and standalone commercial spaces. We feel like that's important because standalone commercial spaces often are able to achieve better user experience than vertical mixed use. I think we've done a lot of vertical mixed use where we've got ground floor retail on tall buildings. The spaces are not usually as desirable for the users as something that could have really tall ceilings, an interesting ceiling feature, roll-up garage doors. The standalone retail building we feel like will really help us achieve a great user that's really going to draw people to the master plan and to the park. And so just pointing out that we have sort of both designs of commercial space here as part of the project. We see the ground floor retail predominantly serving the neighborhood itself, and the standalone retail being more of the destination for visitors. Circulation and public access is going to be a big conversation here. Without bearing the lead too much, when we reached out to Time Equities, they had already partnered up with applicant, and were, out of respect of their partnership with that applicant, they declined to discuss what their willingness would be to modify their existing improvements and what that looks like. I think we believe that whatever they're aiming to do, we are just as capable and willing to accommodate and work with them as any other applicant. We don't know the specifics of it, unfortunately, but certainly it would be a synergy for them to work with any developer of this site, and it would improve their land value to do so, or their improvement value to do so. And we've worked with all sorts of different neighbors and other property owners in the past, and really pride ourselves in being pragmatic and trying to find win-win solutions. And so we feel like if they are willing to make a major modification to their building to create a more central access point, then we are expecting that we'd be able to work with them in that context as well. Without having any commitments from them, our plan did assume that they were not cooperating. I think we were still able to achieve a really awesome design, a really awesome community. We don't feel like it's dependent upon having time equities make a major change to have this. Like, we feel like our plan works without their cooperation. If they do cooperate, it's just going to be a bonus and an added sort of benefit to the project overall. We did put a couple of circles down there in the southern end of the site showing locations of potential pedestrian and bike connection to downtown Troutdale. That's definitely something that we're eager to discuss more with you and see how those things can come to fruition. We feel like having those two major, in the future, these two major areas connect with one another is going to be really important. So appreciate that thought has been given to that already. There was a question about phasing. We went ahead and put a slide together on what that could look like. Really just be simple. Our residential uses besides the for sale townhomes, we would propose to build all in one phase. We would not propose to phase the anything that you see there besides the townhomes and the hotel. Those are the two uses that we would hope to partner up with other developers on. And our goal would be to find a hotel partner and a townhome for sale partner immediately, so the whole project could be built at the same time. We can dig a little bit deeper on what happens if the for sale market is not conducive to that happening in the near term in a minute, but we can commit to doing all of the for rent residential uses, commercial uses besides the hotel and townhomes as part of the initial phase. This is a nice diagram showing the dispersion of green space, nice visualization, just showing that this is not just concrete and buildings. We feel like we've created a really nice landscape and civil design here, and really one that promotes livability of the buildings and doesn't compete with the park that the city's going to be building on the waterfront. This is a diagram showing all of the on-street parking as well as the off-street parking that would be reserved, but just showing how intuitive it's going to be to find all of these on-street parking spaces. We've allowed for room to have the parking be not parallel, so you're pulling into the spaces, which gives us over 150 on-street spots, and we feel like it's really going to be key to having success of the commercial space. This is a nice diagram showing circulation, pedestrian and bikes, how it connects with the broader area. Thought was given to each mode of transportation, not just vehicle. This is the vehicle access diagram itself. There's too much to say other than that there's a clear public way kind of in and out that doesn't involve any major turnarounds other than going around the roundabout. We're going to share with you a couple images here. This is our Alta Civic Station project in Gresham. By our proposal, hopefully you all know that was a public-private partnership with the city of Gresham and Oregon Metro. Gresham really hadn't seen a development of this scale and quality, I guess, ever, but definitely not any time in the decade prior to our project here. What we're really proud of and what these photos showcase is that we have a really creative mix of uses here. In the top left picture, the brick ground floor, those are all ground floor, 2-story live-work units. They each have their own private patio in the front. The bedrooms are upstairs, which allows people to feel a little bit more safe on being in a ground floor unit. They were designed to meet the live-work unit standards as required by the state's vertical housing tax exemption program. In the half-acre public plaza that we built next to the light rail station, We circled the plaza with ground floor retail space. A little bit of our amenities, our club room is down there in our fitness room, really meaning to activate the plaza. There's a children's play area that is located in the plaza, that's open to the public, of course. And our standalone retail building, shown in the bottom right, just shows kind of what you can achieve with creativity and the quality of space you can achieve as a standalone retail building. We've got indoor, outdoor seating, overhead garage doors, outdoor fire table, really a tremendous retail space that's hard to find and really can't be achieved in the ground floor of a mixed-use building. There was a question about kind of, city of Troutdale residents not wanting generic suburban apartments. We thought we'd show you guys some of our suburban housing communities besides Gresham. We're building a project in Camas. This is the style of the building in our amenity building up here, this building in red. We're working with Hacker Architects on that. If you've been to Black Butte Ranch, the new community center was also designed by Hacker, and that's really the inspiration for our public building there. We have 2 projects under construction in Hillsborough now in the Amber Glen master plan. I think what's interesting is we've got 4-story mid-rise building and also 3-story townhomes, very similar to what we're proposing here. Mm-hmm. The townhomes at the first Amber Glen project are for rent. We're building 64 rent townhomes. They're a 2-car garage, in most cases 3 bedrooms, 3 baths, really beautiful units and a great alternative to for sale options for folks out on the west side of Portland right now. Obviously, we're proposing that they're for sale here, but it's a typology that we're very knowledgeable about and we're currently building. And then the project at the bottom is our second project in Amber Glen. We're now under construction on. This is actually 594 units, so really one of the largest projects that has been built at one time in the Portland Metro, showing that our capability to do big projects all at once. It's 4 separate buildings and 4 blocks. There's over 25,000 square feet of roof decks. The buildings are actually being branded and designed a little bit separately. Each has their own character, allowing us to hopefully appeal to a broader demographic. These are some examples of commercial buildings that we feel like are applicable to what we're hoping to achieve in our standalone building. We pulled some images here from the Box Factory in Bend, which was an adaptive reuse, but created some really cool retail space. You can see the height of the building, some of the features that are present that we're able to, that was allowed them to attract a great tenant like this, Avid Cider. This is the Hood River waterfront. This is a 2-story commercial building, ferment brewing and central office co-working. This is a phenomenal example of what we'd hope to achieve here. It doesn't necessarily have to be all retail. If we were able to find a co-working tenant, that would be tremendous. We've built co-working spaces in some of our own communities as amenities, and so we know how to build and operate those. But finding a tenant like central office or someone along that vein would be really, really tremendous. And the other precedent is Bend Brewing Company obviously in Bend. This connection to the river, is obviously very special. People really enjoy coming to this location because of that. And this just shows you kind of the density that worked in this location, right? There's room for some food carts. They do, picnic tables out here, really just people wanting to be close to the river and allowing for that space to happen. And then these are some images we pulled on kind of what we would hope to see the hotel to look like. And again, we're not hotel developers, but we feel like we can position the site and make the right connections with the folks that are to achieve something appropriate for this location. And really what we're calling it is Pacific Northwest lifestyle. It's a approachable but authentic Pacific Northwest design and style. It's not a luxury brand per se, but it's high quality. It's oriented towards the outdoors, enjoying the outdoors, The Allison Inn in Newburgh is a nice example of something on a little bit of a higher end scale, but still a sort of approachable design as well. So this is what we'd hope to achieve from a hospitality perspective. We put together a slide on the timeline here. We conservatively put 24 months from hopefully being verbally awarded, the site in March to when we would be going vertical in construction. I would say we'd love to go faster than that. Our history at Alta Civic Station was about 15 months from when Oregon Metro selected us as the developer to when we actually broke ground. I think David and Eric Schmidt and others can vouch for us in that we were pushing the pace the entire time. Our view on these processes is that, the last 3 years have taught us anything, is that things change really quickly, right? And while it's really important to do the groundwork in the beginning phase to get community involvement, to make sure we have buy-in with all the stakeholders, it's equally as important to have a sense of urgency and to execute on the design, the permitting, and the financing in a really time-efficient way so that market conditions don't change on us in the meantime, and then the project gets stalled out. So, we really want to say both, we're willing to go at your timeline, but we also think it's in the best interest of everyone to think about this as something that should have some urgency, because between global pandemics and inflation and interest rates, there's always a boogeyman around the corner in the development world. Time equals risk, and it's in everyone's best interest to move quickly. This will be the last slide, I think, before we get to the questions. I wanted to make a note that our vision and plan here was really put together with the idea of maximizing residual land value. We know that the city has invested a lot of money in cleaning up the site and work on the site, and we were trying to solve for a way to repay the city their investment in full, while only asking for a limited incentive or subsidy to do so. And that was the multi-tax abatement program, which we assumed to be 10 years at 80%, that would commence upon construction completion. We are looking forward to having this conversation and hearing what's important to the city. And we're pragmatic in wanting to achieve something that everyone is really happy with. Our view is that maximizing land value is, with the access that we currently have, is what our scheme shows. If there are other priorities and things to consider, we want to have that conversation. It will likely have an impact on what that land value is, but we know there's more subsidies available than just the multi-program. We like to keep things simple and say we can do all this. All we need is the multi-program, and pay you $8 million in the meantime. But that's a conversation to be had. We're just sort of starting at this place. And with that, I've got the questions up and we can sort of start the conversation, but I guess were there any specific questions or feedback on that presentation side?
Michael, I think it might be useful, and I noticed a little bit, that if you could talk a bit about the rest of your team and who's on there and how they're supporting you.
From a design professional standpoint?
That was where I was leaning, but.
So YBA Architects assisted us in putting together these diagrams and drawings. We know that they worked on some of the early design stuff for this particular site. YBA was our architect on Alta Civic Station. We think really highly of Matt and Alex and their team. We felt it appropriate to really to present as ourselves and not necessarily as a design team, given YBA's history with this site already. And because this project may take multiple architects. And I think if we are awarded the site, you know, YBA will definitely be one of the architects that we'll interview and meet with. And we had a great experience with them, but you're really picking the developer. And I wanted to make sure that that's, you know, who you guys are evaluating.
Yeah, I appreciate that clarification. So if you were chosen, that's TBD on your side, and you've also mentioned other folks that you've worked with, and they're all really good, but that helps me to understand some stuff. Abe, do you have a question?
Yeah, just a clarifying point also. So you're building a range of different vertical projects. Are you expecting that the project as a whole will be prevailing? So you have bowling wages and...
At this point, no. I mean, with the subsidy of just the multi-tax exemption, we're not asking for any direct funds from the city, so we wouldn't trigger any prevailing wage requirements. So our Alta Civic Station project, the way that Oregon Metro approached it was they did not want the developer to have to be triggered by that. Yeah. So we didn't receive any funds from Metro or the city of Gresham. Metro sold us the land for $1,000, and the city provided a tax payment through the vertical housing tax exemption program. Sure. But there was no public investment in the project.
In the project, right. Right, oh, that's helpful. If for some reason it ended up being prevailing though, what happens? I just need to ask it.
The cost goes up a little bit, right? So
okay, so you guys are able to absorb the cost, or
not in the current proposal for the land price, and so you know, we haven't done the math, I guess, per se on what the increase to construction cost would be, but it would have a material impact. Yeah. You know, Jonathan Williams at Metro was a terrific resource on kind of navigating those BOLI rules. They brought in their own counsel, Randy Bateman, and you know, we were given the public benefit we provided through the plaza, the additional density. They felt very comfortable that the reduced land price was not public subsidy. Yeah.
Great, so we will move now into the conversation questions portion of this, which you have written out, which helps with your presentation, but we'll still go around and ask those questions. So I'll pass it over to Jordan, who's going to go first.
So what are 2 or 3 challenges you see in developing the site to your vision, and what do you propose to overcome, and what role do you see the city playing in this role?
So I put little initials next to these to kind of cue us who's going to answer. So Kevin's going to jump in on that one.
Yeah, I mean, we really think access and connectivity is the real challenge to the site as currently configured, and in lieu of, even if you had time equities on board, it still is a challenge to get people in and out of the site. So where we would learn, and the second part of that is connecting the existing retail centers of downtown Troutdale and Park to our site. So this is really where we would look to work highly closely with the city and obviously fire to make the improvements necessary to get people through and around to our site on the offsite improvements. And then additionally, we would really prioritize an improvement to the path connecting through downtown to our site, either pedestrian over or under the tracks, or around or around and under the bridge. We'd love to see that be a multimodal lit path so that people feel comfortable coming to and from at dusk and in the evening, our site. Especially, we think that would help with both our commercial, downtown's commercial, and the hotel. We think that that's the key to activating both the park and creating synergy between our commercial and the city's commercial areas.
Can you elaborate on how you envision infrastructure costs being covered? Are there specific elements that you're asking the city to participate in or have the city pay for?
At this time, the only thing, and this is an unknown dollar value, would be, and it could be, we don't know that it is a definite, we would be looking when we get our formal analysis for the offsite improvements to access the site and for pedestrian improvements, to then open that discussion with the city about how much we can absorb and cannot. We fully plan to pay for all public streets and infrastructure on our site.
Yeah, so I think that's the way we underwrote it, was that anything on site, our roads, even if they're going to be publicly dedicated, we would be paying for those. Off-site connections, like the bridges we talked about, improvement to 257th Way, we would look to, collaborate with the city and figure out a way to make those happen. But not knowing what's possible yet, what happens with time equities, what happens with these bridges. I know we need railroad approval. It's too soon to speculate, but that's where we would expect the city's investment to go.
Okay.
So, quick follow-up. So the city's still gonna have to pick up some of the infrastructure costs.
Off-site infrastructure cost.
So the city does have very limited tax increment resources.
Right.
Just, you may already be aware that when you've worked in other communities, what other creative public-private resources have you utilized to help address public infrastructure?
The easiest example is Hillsborough. I mean, they do a great job of doing TDT credits for transportation improvements. So our two Amerglen projects, we're building a lot of roads, and they are providing us credit based on whether it's a local, a collector, or an arterial road. They have different classification standards. And the cost that we're paying to build those roads above a local road standard are 100% creditable towards our TDT liability. So there's a deferral agreement that's signed at the time of building permit issuance. We validate all the costs we spend on those roads during construction, and they do the sort of reconciliation at the time of certificate of occupancy.
So private sector builds the public roads.
Yes, and Hillsborough loves that because they get to avoid prevailing wage and things like that. And yeah, that's a pretty straightforward way of doing it.
And have you also worked with LIDs, local improvement districts, where you end up being assessed, but you're able to get a very, very low interest rate on the cost of build out?
Really familiar with the concept. We haven't done a specific project while it would like that, but yeah, very familiar with it.
Okay, I'll jump on to the next question, which is, how has the current state of the market influenced your development program, and do you see changes in the next 1 to 3 years that would make you adjust your thinking on your approach?
So I'll start here. I think part of the reason why I do residential development is because it is the most stable and anti-cyclical property type development out there, really. People always need places to live. We're in a state and a region that has a housing shortage. Office buildings, hotels are notoriously very cyclical and sensitive to economic cycles. Our plan really hasn't changed based on anything that's occurred in the past 6 months. Now, the interest rate environment with the ownership housing piece is going to have an impact. We are talking with local home builders now about them selling us selling us platted lots that they were planning to build for sale to us to build now for rent, because they don't feel like the market's there for sale. This is a snapshot in time, but I think just an anecdote about the for sale construction market is going through some turmoil. Those builders are actually coming to us and saying, can you guys build this for rent? With those townhomes, we would be happy to build those for rent. We know that that's not what the city wants. I think our starting sort of position on that is we could give it, we're going to plat them as individual lots during the design process. And this process is going to take, anywhere from 12 to 24 months. And we can be looking for a partner to build those as for sale that entire time. If we get 2 years down the road and interest rates haven't come back down and that market's not there, we're happy to build them as for rent. We can give it an amount of time that the city's comfortable with trying. And if eventually we'll say, okay, we'd rather just have the housing units there and not wait for this market to come back, we can be your partner to build this as for rent. But we agree if that's important to the city, we can give it an adequate amount of time, make sure they're platted as individual lots. And even if we build them for rent in that way, they can always be converted to for sale in the future. The hospitality and retail uses, I think the stuff that we've designed is so destination oriented that it's going to not be as influenced by, broader macroeconomic malaise right now. There needs to be a great hotel at the front door of the Gorge. This is a really great opportunity to do that. People really want to have a place to come enjoy the riverfront after a hike. We feel like that commercial building we're envisioning delivers that. Those are things this region need, and we don't think that this snapshot in time with the economy is going to prevent that from happening. So really, our vision we're really confident in, based on what the specific uses are. Kevin or Josh, do you guys have anything to add to that?
I think you
Okay, all right, we're there.
So Michael, I'm just going to repeat it back to you so I understand, because one of my friends works in hotels. So you're pretty bullish on future hotel, boutique hotel in this area. You think it has legs?
Yeah, if we were building a business-oriented hotel downtown, we'd be having a different conversation. But we're building a lifestyle destination resort type hotel that's frankly needed. So it's a different market opportunity and has just different factors.
And then thank you. And then the second part of the question would be just going back to make sure again that I understand. I think I understood the notion of, again, not being able to control the market. You background feeling that residential is kind of the most solid or safe way to go. If the market's ready for an ownership model, is that something you guys are doing, or is that, I might have got lost on that piece. I just want to understand.
Yeah, no, we do not build for sale housing ourselves, but we would design and plat the lots.
Okay.
And then we would look to partner with a home builder or another developer that's willing to do that for sale piece. I guess, not to bore you guys, but we've been around for 25 years, and one of the things we've learned in that period of time is that we should stick to what we know and what we're good at. And so that's why we really focus on kind of our main business. In the past, we've built condos, we've done different things, and we've learned that it's best for us to kind of stay in our lane, so to speak.
Because I'm on a roll. So hearing what you're saying, how do you control the outcome of the entire product, right? So if you're, I guess, handing it off to a private developer, how do we control that we're all kind of getting the thing that we want at the end in terms of design and look and feel and all that good stuff?
Well, I would assume any person jumping in would still have to get their design approved. We're going to do the horizontal entitlements, right? We're going to create the lots for the hotel and homes, and we can have a conceptual design for those things. And someone might say, that's great, we want to advance that design and build it that way. Or they might say, hey, we think it should be a little bit different. They're still going to have to go through a city approval process.
So would you think about having design standards to cover the entire site so that when you get a home builder type, that entity still has creativity in terms of design, but yeah.
That's a good question. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, as long as the design standard process wasn't a year long, or if it was.
Yeah, this would be a private sector design.
Sure. Okay.
Standard,
yeah.
And then have you worked in situations where you have actually handed parcels off to condo builders?
We've done it with retail out parcels quite a bit. So a lot of our suburban development around the country, there's retail facing the main road, and we're creating outlot parcels and we're selling those. There's been other instances where we've partnered and sold off a piece to like a hotel before. I can't think of a specific one, but I know we're partnering on with a townhome site next door in Raleigh, Durham right now. We do a lot of projects around the country. I don't know all of them, but I'm sure that we have. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Okay.
I think it's you. He got mine.
Nope.
No, you're
Kind
fine.
of walked you out with that one.
Yeah, we're good.
And kind of, yeah, even you're alluding to, besides like breweries, what other light industrial or maker creative spaces would you imagine partnering with, I guess, on the Confluence site?
Well, that was an interesting question for us. The light industrial, I think we kind of wanted to clarify and I guess ask kind of what you guys were envisioning there. Light industrial didn't seem like the highest and best use for waterfront property to us. But it seems like that question came in here twice, there must be some background there. Is there a lack of that space in the community currently? Are there particular businesses you guys think, would be a good fit for this area? Not to turn around the question on the question, but I think we need, it seems like there's something behind it that we wanted to have a discussion about.
I'll take a stab at it, and Marley, please jump in, but I think the community is seeing a desire for these types of businesses in our trip in our industrial area. What's unique about this site is that it's kind of this transitional landscape between the industrial and this kind of more historic downtown. So we were kind of thinking in this notion of makerspace and breweries and coffee roasters have captured people's imagination. So it is interesting to hear your perspective that maybe you don't think that's the highest and best use for the site. But that our question was based more like, here's the stuff that we've been thinking about. What other things could you imagine? So
yeah. I think some of these precedents, the box factory in Bend is a good one. If you have really tall ceilings and kind of a blank space, people can use these spaces as maker spaces and the industrial. Have you guys, the dairy building in Central East Side is another great example of that. It's a mix of breweries. There's some production bakers in there. There's people who are making clothing. Really the space, the commercial space in the main building there really should be flexible for any of those types of uses. I think in really, it would just be who comes, who can we attract? If there's the demand for that type of light industrial makerspace, then that's who will lease it, we assume. The other thing I was going to mention is the ground floor spaces of these residential buildings. We've kind of earmarked as, again, commercial, some live work units. I think creating space that can evolve over time as the neighborhood evolves over time and as the world evolves is important. So having those ground floor spaces be designed to be flexible is really the way to respond to uncertain, future of what the demand looks like.
Yeah, and I guess I'll just add a little bit to your question about the light industrial space and why we had sort of put an emphasis on it in the questions that we were asking. We've seen an increase in breweries, coffee roasters, wineries, those sort of businesses looking for space. And I think that what's special about this piece of land is that it does have the human connection and the walkability and the connectedness to downtown that a lot of those businesses are looking for that the rest of our industrial land just doesn't offer.
Right.
So the rest of our industrial land is all north of I-84 and it's great for truck stops and Amazons and FedExes, but it's not necessarily great for a brewery that wants to interact with its customers.
Yep.
And so the light industrial was really speaking to those sort of maker specific operations that would thrive in an area where they get to have that commercial interaction and people get to experience their product or see it being made. And its proximity to the highway is still really great for them. And then from a branding perspective, being able to be a part of the Gateway to the Gorge is really great for Troutdale specifically, because locations such as Cascade Locks are at times because with bad weather and other things they lose their access to the rest of the area, whereas We are still close to Portland. When the highways close, they close just past Troutdale. So it still allows people to have the logistical access to the Portland Metro that a lot of those makers need. So that was why we had included it.
Yeah, it's really helpful to know. I mean, I think that's where, like I said, we wanted to kind of iterate with you guys and understand what you see as that demand.
Yeah.
The idea that we have is probably just making sure the spaces are flexible, and I think having this standalone building is really key in doing that, and designing some of the ground floor spaces to accommodate different types of tenants, not just residential users, is going to be key.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you touched on a significant portion of the hospitality in the hotel, and I think you had some really good examples. And so I might reword this just a little bit and talk about necessarily your target market with what you call a lifestyle type of facility, type of hospitality hotel. Can you just elaborate on that just a little bit more? Because I think it ties in with that light industrial conversation we just had.
Right.
We just had. We're looking for an inspirational community and creativity that can come from where this site, where it sits significantly in Troutdale and where the rivers come together. So how does that lifestyle brand for a hospitality development kind of play into that?
Yeah, I want to get Kevin's thoughts on this.
I think what we're looking at and what we set the precedent as is a hotel that is not at the peak of luxury and not there to suit a business traveler, but a person who is visiting to hike, to enjoy the rivers, to visit the waterfalls, to go to a concert at McMiniman's. Maybe it's a family vacation. In the winter, we see it could be, it has great access to the ski resorts and hiking and snowshoeing, cross-country skiing. So that's why we really think it's a 365-day-a-year vacation hotel. And it might be people from Portland that are just coming out for the day or the weekend. It might be people from the region. So
yeah, it's like, and I think another use is the staycation away from the kids, maybe for a weekend away. The key thing is like responding to the context that it's in. I think the hotels that we picked here all do a tremendous job of responding to their environments. The Rush Creek Lodge is outside of Yosemite, amongst really tall pine trees. It's beautiful. It's woodsy. The Allison Inn, in the wine country, does a great job of orienting you towards the outdoors again. This is a very unique location, and I think the hotel will really want to respond to that. A generic Holiday Inn Express is a disaster here.
Absolutely.
So that's what we're saying. Yeah.
The boutique feel.
Right. Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, have you been in touch with any of these types of hotels?
Well,
just not locking them in, I get it.
No. We know some of these people, but I feel like it's a little bit too early to start having those conversations. But yeah, I think it's very obvious what the opportunity is, and so it's not like it's not a build it, they will come situation. It's, hey, this opportunity is very clear to have this be Portland's gorge hotel, and I think people will respond to that.
Were you showing that hotel closer to the freeway? Or
Yeah.
You thought about moving it
the
other direction where it's a little quieter, but just.
Well, we did orient it so that it's sort of, I think you could do another bar here to kind of close it off. Yeah. That's probably what you'd want to do. You are going to have some rooms that look out towards, but they'd be relatively small percentage of versus the ones, kind of facing an interior courtyard, hopefully with like a pool and towards the river. So, we didn't put as much thought into the hotel design on this page, but that's kind of how I would envision it happening. You could move it towards the south, but I think the visibility that the hotel would gain, or the benefit from the visibility, is really valuable to them. But I'd be interested to hear others' thoughts on that.
To follow up on that really quickly as well, how would you when would you start beginning those negotiations or like seeking out a hotel developer for that? And like, if you didn't find one within a given period of time, would you reconsider uses in that area, or would you continue looking for hospitality? Like how long would you be willing to sort of sit on that to find the perfect hotelier?
I mean, I think a pretty long time. I don't know specifically. I mean, like I said, the approval process for the master plan in our buildings, I'm guessing, is 18 months plus or minus. So it gives us a pretty long runway once, if we are selected to have those conversations. If, 12 months after that, 30 months from now, if there's really no one biting, then the city's not going to want to see it be empty too long. We'll just come back to you and say no one's biting, but we're not ascribing really much land value to it. And so it's not, we're not using that as a real economic driver of our master plan. We're expecting really to get, that wasn't how we got to our $8 million, right. I guess. We're not going to be holding out for top dollar on the hotel. I think it's more important to get, the right compatible use and bring that energy to the development.
Shifting gears from uses to land again, would you in any way consider a very long-term ground lease as opposed to a sale?
Yeah, so we would consider it so long as at the end of the ground lease period, we would have the option to buy it at the then market rate value of the land. What happens on long-term ground leases when the lessor does not have the option to buy is that it becomes kind of a hot potato of it's going to go back to the owner eventually, and the improvements start to get neglected. And so as long as there's an option to buy at the end of the 99 years, we would be fine with it. It's not our preference. It's definitely just one more hurdle, but we've structured similar projects.
Okay, yeah. We're not proposing that, just testing the breadth of flexibility.
Yeah.
Public's been very involved in the process, so far as what we wanted to do down there and where we're trying to go from a vision standpoint. So what would your public engagement strategy be with this as it evolves?
You want to take the first crack at that?
Yeah, I think we would obviously go through a public process of town hall meetings and presentations. We think it's important to listen to people's ideas and their concerns, and a lot of times people have great ideas for how to improve what you've done. But we also think it's important that it not be a constantly changing design or idea, that it's set around parameters. This is the goals that us and the city have set out to achieve here, and then how can we modify our ideas of achieving those goals, possibly to incorporate the public's opinion.
Yeah, we've seen success in the past of really coming to those meetings with a strong idea of what we're going to do, so that people can respond to it, give us input, rather than, hey, this is a totally blank slate, what should we do? That's not as productive. So I think having alignment with the city and the stakeholders here, and then getting the public involvement right away is kind of the right sequence. And yeah, I think we've been really successful in that. I'm really proud to say that in our City of Portland projects, we've been approved at design review in our first hearing each time, 4 out of 4 times. I don't know of any other developer that's gone through Portland design review on the first hearing 100% of the time.
And you're still a developer?
But that's because in a lot of cases, we had the neighborhood groups there to publicly testify and support us. So, we did the meetings with the neighborhood groups, in a lot of cases, a couple of cases, they were like, this is great, we have nothing to say. In the few that they did, we made the appropriate adjustments, made sure they're on board. That really helps the land use process.
Partnership is so important.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So who would lead that effort in the park? Would you guys lead it? Would YBA lead it? Would you bring some other professional into that?
No, it's the developer and the architect. Yeah, I think the architect's really better at describing the architecture than we are. But we're the ones who've informed the program and those decisions. So it's really, it's a partnership with the developer and architect.
Okay, so on to specific questions, you talked a little bit about this, but your proposed design utilizes the indirect existing access. Did you consider working with the outlet mall owner? You talked about that, to create access through the mall to redesign your project. I guess, talking a little bit more about, from your guys' perspective, maybe the value of making that connection through the mall as opposed to going around. A little bit more detail would be welcomed.
Yeah, I mean, it results in a better project if the mall is cooperating, probably. I think the project is still amazing without it. Like I said, we did reach out to Time Equities. At that point, they had already agreed to partner with another applicant. And so we weren't able to figure out the specifics of what that looked like on Time Equities' behalf. But I think, again, we're confident that we can work with them on the same terms that anyone else can. I don't see a reason why we couldn't. The property itself is strong enough, and if we can do enough connecting it to downtown without Time Equities involvement, could still be very successful. But we think if they are really willing to make a major change to their improvements and like really alter that connection, then that's great. We'd love to figure that out with them.
And then assuming, like, do you have it might be premature, but do you have a sense, if you were able to do that, how that might change how you, sorry to put you on the spot.
No.
But I mean, you got sort of you have like a main street coming in now, and there's a reason why you have a main street, because you kind of go around and then you start the entry sequence to the heart of the site. If we're coming through in some way or form through the existing shopping center, how might that change some of your thinking about your plan?
I think that takes a detailed meeting with the architect. I think YBA does have really special talent in these types of master plans. And I want to get Matt's opinion on that.
Yeah.
I think the uses that we have are generally still the same. If anything, if Time Equities does, punch a hole through their building, that just activates their commercial space more, right? So then you actually have more nearby commercial space that's likely to be active. And so I don't think that means we would want to do more commercial space ourselves. If anything, we want to complement that, right? So I think our uses are still about right. And the key things of how that waterfront park edge condition works, I think we're pretty strongly convicted that it's important to not have a street be a barrier between the park and the development itself. I think having it be more of a walking path between the park and the development itself, having it be pedestrian oriented rather than auto oriented is the right thing, so that it doesn't have as major of an impact to our design, I guess, as maybe you might, as we might think. Does that make sense?
It does, yep. And I think you've answered my questions. I don't know if you guys want to add anything to that, but I think you covered it.
So,
Go ahead.
okay, yeah. Speaking of Time Equities, so if you did have, if you were selected developer here, how would you approach Time Equities? What would you do to try to incentivize them?
It's a good question. I guess we'd have to hear what they're currently thinking. And I feel like a little bit in the dark on how to answer that question. But I know that they would benefit from our project. And they would benefit from having a better connection to that project. And so it's whenever the interests are aligned, I think that's a really important starting point. We're not just asking them for something, they're getting something back too. And so, that cost, is it, to modify their improvements, do we contribute towards it? What does that look like? I feel like I'm a little bit out of my, to answer it, but I think we could figure it out the same as anyone else.
Have you in the past had any situations similar to this where there was a pivotal owner involved and you really needed to find collaboration? And if you did do that, how did you do it?
We had a couple case studies we actually wanted to talk about on that. So I've got some slides here still too. So this project here we finished construction on last year. It's called the Art Tower, and the name Art comes from the Artist Repertory Theater that we're adjacent to. So the Artist Repertory Theater owned an entire block of downtown Portland, and they were facing pretty severe financial distress. We're looking at selling and leaving downtown, or they were so far behind on their mortgage, essentially they were in default and potentially going to get foreclosed on. We figured out a way to unlock the land value of their site, build a great project while having them remain on the block. So they shrunk their footprint from a full block down to a half block. We actually knocked down a wing of the building. The other quarter of the block was a surface parking lot, so that was easier to do. But we entered into what's called a separation development agreement with the Artist Repertory Theater, whereby we hired Anderson Construction to structurally reinforce their building, knock down a wing, and we paid for that with money that we left in escrow ahead of time. That was from the purchase price. What they had left over was more than enough to repay their loan in full, and so they owned the property then free and clear, and they had money left over to serve as an anchor investment for their forthcoming renovation of the theater. So they've now raised about $20 million, and they are going to be starting construction in April to do their renovation of their theater. This was highly complicated and took a ton of cooperation with the Artist Repertory Theater. Happy to give you guys references on their executive director and how we managed that process and did what we said we were going to do, but pretty actual applicable example of how we've been able to be creative with neighbors in the past.
I'll even add too, and now that the building's been open and that everything's developed on the operations side, when we're operating the departments, we're actually creating a kind of a symbiotic relationship with them where they come into the building and they do some of the programming or events in the building, and we kind of do the same thing with the residents and promote what they're doing. And so there's that relationship too, and that would probably be very similar to this project where we would partner and try to create a synergy between the two groups.
That's a really good point. This photo shows we actually designed our lobby to double as a performance space because we wanted to integrate the two halves of the block, and once a month the Artist Repertory Theater produces an event in our lobby that's free for our residents, and so really just kind of sealing those binds together. Josh and his team on the residential side do a really tremendous job of creating really strong resident experiences. We had some information on that in our submittal, but I think we're really proud of the way we operate our buildings and not just build them.
Only one more time equities related question. So you guys are a national company with really significant resources. They're an international company with very significant resources. Is there any way you would even consider partnering with them so you're sharing equity in some way?
Sure. Yeah, we've co-developed sites in the past. Yeah. So we co-developed Block 17 in the Pearl District with Hoyt Street, the condo developer. We've done co-developments with other large commercial developers. So there's no rule against that. I was going to share one other quick case study. This is a site we're currently under construction on in University Place, Washington, which is just outside of Tacoma, so on the kind of western half of that peninsula. We actually got a site that was entirely landlocked. There's no adjacent public right-of-ways. Found a bowling alley and a movie theater next to one another that just have private drive accesses from the main streets. We're able to work with all of these property owners around our project, south and the north, to coordinate temporary construction agreements, permanent access agreements. We're going to be building a public right-of-way as part of this. It felt like a really good example of a way that we were able to build a really access constrained site as well.
Very helpful, thanks.
So most of your development's market rate apartments, right? And there might be some ownership, but it sounds like those are already being rethought on your side. And then we've got the maker spaces. And do you see that changing much?
We will develop the market rate apartments and the retail / commercial spaces. That's what our business sort of is. Anything that's for sale, we would look to partner with someone on, and the hospitalities we would partner with someone on. That won't change.
Other than that, you'll be doing it.
That's right. Yeah. I said this really comes out of trial and error of 25 years of being a development company. We know what we're good at, and we know what we're not as good at. And so, we feel like we're delivering 80% of the vision ourselves, sort of, and then, confident that we can find partners for the other bits.
Is any of your program impacted by infrastructure? Really, you talked about access, but haven't really talked that much about the infrastructure piece of it.
Like water, sewer?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's one of those things you kind of find out once you get going. Do you know how well the site's served by existing water and sewer, or not at all, or?
It's served, but to like the top left corner of it, so not through the site.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have I think there's a utility analysis in some of the documents that's on the website as well that sort of discusses what we think it might cost to do some of those public improvements.
We think that this site has a lot of parallels to our two Hillsborough sites we've recently started developing, which were the former Oregon Graduate Institute campuses, but had been demolished before we took them in one case, and in the other case was a disused building for 15 years. Where we have experience, and as a company and locally have experience doing the horizontal infrastructure development on our own site. Now, it's even with an analysis, it's very hard until you get your civil engineer to actually take a look at what needs to be upsized or not, and if that's sufficient. And that's very hard to do in a very conceptual estimate. But doing the horizontal improvements through the site, we have a lot of experience managing that process and getting that process, absorbing that process at the cost.
All of our suburban sites have that same problem for the most part, right? You got to bring or build a lot of utilities. So.
Yeah, it's there, it's just not there.
Yeah. It's better than some other situations we've seen. So.
Would you be able to pull up your site plan again really quick?
Sure. Let's try to find the biggest one. Okay.
So then with the roads, only the main street going through with the cul-de-sac would be publicly dedicated?
Yeah, that was.
Or can you speak to public dedication of any utilities?
I think back one shows kind of what we expect.
Yeah, we think
there we go.
A couple of other these branches may want to be dedicated as public. We don't have a super strong preference. I mean, it just depends on what the public road standards are going to be. Like, are you going to have a problem with us parking these public roads like we've shown?
Having on-street parking on
Yeah,
public roads? No.
Okay.
I believe we call for it.
Okay.
So,
I don't think other than the main street, I don't think, even if you wanted the main street to be privately with a public access, I don't think we had have a long-term issue with that.
Okay.
I think our preference would be to dedicate that main street as public, for sure. But we're open to how the city wants to approach it. I think for us, where the city can really help is the off-site access public improvement, especially as it pulls through. If time equities did not want to punch it through, and it comes to that, especially as it pulls through the time equities development.
But you could use the TTD for the public streets that are within the Confluence, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I think this has shown also that some of these are public right-of-way so that the for sale townhomes have public right-of-way access and that they're not relying upon any private party easements. So this is probably pretty accurate, but this is usually a conversation with the city. You guys tell us what you need or what you don't.
yeah, normally we would require those all to be dedicated to as public right of way. So,
Okay.
but that's the future
That-
conversation.
Yeah, it's fine by us to do it that way.
Great. You want to move into their questions
Yeah,
portion of
we're
things?
there. Thank you.
This is the most on track, on time we've been yet. So we finally got it down.
Sign of things to come.
Yeah, so we welcome any and all of your questions now at this time.
We wanted to hear what you guys thought as examples, precedents for what you want on this property. Anything locally or non-local that you feel like represents your vision?
I got a lot of red lines here and everybody can jump in. Yeah, the city's looking for a design that maximizes its unique location along the river and the proximity to the gorge.
Right.
And in terms of like, is there one perfect example for the city? I don't know if there is one, but kind of a couple places we talked about that kind of came to our mind was Independence, Independence, Oregon, the way the hotel is on the water. And, you know, I frankly think the water edge could be more public, to be honest with you, but I just like the fact that, there was a notion of the hotel being on the water. Aranco Station's public plaza, again, great community space, meeting both the business and the community end, the splash pad. It's exciting. You talked about the Hood River waterfront, which is frankly one of our favorite projects. And I think, Slabtown is similar in spirit in terms of scales of development. So it's not all one size fits all in terms of massing. Frankly, your notions about one-story buildings and how they operate is a pretty interesting concept. I'm not sure I've heard it that way. So that's how we answered that question. Elements of Newburgh, things like that. It wants to be a place. I think you kind of hit on it. It wants to be a place for the people of Troutdale, but it wants to be a regional attractor.
Right.
It wants to be a place where people are like, man, I'm going to actually, you guys know from a past life, don't want to get in trouble, but it'd be like, hey, we're going to the mountain. We went through Gresham. It was always a challenge. I always said we were gateway to the gorge. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. But now that I'm really in the gateway to the gorge, like we really want to be that place, and we have everything to make that happen.
Yep.
And so, it's that kind of understanding of the landscape, where we are, our proximity, kind of just building upon that. So, you guys spoke to it. I think you guys talked about, let's see. Go ahead.
I think the next question is, it's similar, slightly different, but what do you want us to know about the residents, stakeholders here? What should, besides what was already put in the RFP, what do you want to tell us about this community?
They want to be a partner. I mean, they want and expect to work with you. The Town Center Advisory Board will continue in some capacity in that vein, but they want to work with you. In fairness to you, it is important that establish some guidelines or principles that we can all be kind of working towards, so we're not recreating the wheel with each meeting. I think that's a very fair comment. But this community has a lot of pride and takes a lot of pride and has waited a long time for this to kind of happen. So they have some ideas about what that looks and should feel like. From my perspective as the new guy, it's about having a thoughtful conversation with them. So that, hopefully that answers that question, that outreach, that engagement, that inclusiveness is pretty important.
Yep.
I would just say it's been many, many years in the making, and it's really something that's very important and very passionate for them. And they just want to see it done well and done right.
And they want it to reflect the community in the place. They want it, yeah.
I would say, just to touch a little bit more on that from a residential side, is that the residents of Troutdale they're a blue collar workforce community that spends 20 minutes on average leaving the city to go to work. They then spend probably double that to get home during rush hour traffic, right? We want to create and partner with the developer to create something here that not only gives them some place to come home to, but also some place then to leave their home and enjoy the spirit of where they live, where they've decided to put down their roots. And so understanding that, yes, we're creating something for Troutdale residents, but again, on a regional scale, something that people can come from all over and enjoy what we're so fortunate to have here at the confluence of these two rivers.
Yeah, to say a very distinct identity out here. I mean, we say we're small town feel, and we're constantly growing, but we are not Gresham, we are not Portland. Right. We want our own sense of place.
It's really helpful. Thank you. If there was a trait you guys wanted to see in your development partner, what would that trait be?
Well, we covered a little bit, but I would say the two things that jumped out to me is just the ability to listen, which again, said another way, means to have a thoughtful dialogue. I think it's imperative that you listen to the community, and then it's, hopefully you're skilled in your abilities to bring your many years of expertise to communicate what you're thinking to the community. So they have, so we grow together in terms of a unified idea. The other thing is just to be, flexible, that we all understanding that it's not only it's nutty out there. Things are changing pretty quickly, as you said. And so we all need to be, I think we all, both the city side and the development community, needs to be flexible and creative in their thinking. I think ultimately the city of Troutdale has waited a long time. They want to get it right. And so I don't think the city of Troutdale is jumping to just jump in. This is a long-term investment and they want to get it right. So back and forth dialogue, a thoughtful back and forth dialogue would go a long ways.
Yeah, it's super important to do that up front, right? Before people have the feeling that the train's left the station and they're not being involved. So I think that's, it's good to hear. Anyone else have anything to add on that?
I would just say that, we feel the gravity of the position that we're in as stewards of this property. And so having a developer partner understanding that is key moving forward.
I think to Randy's point on that, in Portland or in Gresham, this site might not make the whole difference to a community, but in a place like Troutdale, a site like this makes the whole difference to the community and can completely change, or have an impact on everyone who lives here and everyone who interacts with it. And so like it has the ability to completely, like, I don't want to say revolutionize, but like shape and transform and have an impact on Troutdale. I mean, that it's such a large piece of what our small town is. And so, that's why I think that so many people place so much importance into what happens here and the way that it interacts with the gorge and with nature, with the public and private spaces.
Yeah, it came out in the local newspaper and on social media, and I mean, my whole neighborhood was talking about it, and it was all making a buzz, so I mean, it's an impact.
It's the talk of the town.
Yeah.
I will say one thing is operate. So everything's built. So the development's done. We're operating now, and we've got the apartments and the spaces. It's really important for us to. We're not just. I don't think we're your typical operators as far as apartment operators go. We really try to create that connection between the community and the building, the symbiotic relationship. We've opened up a thing called the Ground Floor Project, which does just that. It's not just about like creating a programming, but it's creating a program that's significant with the community, to bring the community into the building, and the building is part of the community, right, to support it. And so that's really important to us in all of our operations after it's built, right? It's important to know.
Yeah, I think we realized as apartment developers, people don't feel like they can feel like they're excluded from whatever's built because it's a private space for the apartment side, right? So we had a project in Seattle where we just left the entire ground floor open, and we just said, let the community figure out what to do with the space, and that really turned out incredible, and it's inspired us to do very similar things in all of our projects, like the theater space in our art tower project and the plaza at Civic Station. I mean, you need to create a space for the community to feel like they're part of the project because they might not live upstairs, but it's in their community, right? I think that's where commercial spaces are important, but also the way that we operate and make that outreach to the community to make it feel like it's a great bit.
And some of that's found through the demographic, but a lot of it's through the stakeholder meetings and understanding what the community wants.
So yeah, I would add from an outsider perspective, having worked with the city of Troutdale for a number of years, having patience is going to be really important, and then being really willing to get down and do problem solving. It's a site that, as you've identified, has some challenges.
Yeah.
Financing the infrastructure is going to be a challenge, making sure you get the right uses, but in the end, the outcome could be absolutely phenomenal.
Yep.
So to a point you guys were just making a second ago, would you be open to ground floor spaces that were open to the public, like a community center or a library or something that has more public interaction with it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And then to your comment, I mean, I think, look, we understand, we feel the weight, the responsibility to, I mean, of any project we do, right? Like we're building, anytime we're building a building, we're changing people's environments, and there's often like a sensitive response to that. And so one of the things that, I've made as the foundation of our team here is like, we're gonna act with integrity, and we're never gonna overpromise you anything. We're gonna shoot it to you straight, because I think when we don't have our trustworthiness, the whole process falls apart. And so, really the foundation of success in these partnerships is that we trust each other, and that, we prove it, and that we've, check on the people that we've worked with in the past, and that, we're also going to not sugarcoat stuff if things go sideways and we need to work, but, we're going to act with integrity the entire way through. Good. We hit on this next one already a lot of the emphasis on the light industrial, so we can kind of skip that one, I think.
Yeah, I would just say don't be too specific. I mean, you're trying to narrow it down, and right now I'd say just keep it open to everything.
Yeah. What is the city's ideal timeline?
I have down here as fast as possible. No, I mean, ideally, the city would like to get something done. City's waited a long time.
Yep.
With that said, want to have a good partner. I mean, ideally, we'd look for, and you've thrown out some ideas about somebody who can take down the site and begin development, and you have some ideas about that. That's our goal. But ultimately, I think we want to get it right. And if it spends a little more time on the upfront due diligence part, getting it right, I think that's most important. But
Yeah, as soon as possible, but also as meaningful as possible. So,
Yeah.
Like you said, you spoke towards integrity and sticking to your word and how imperative that is, or important that is for this project and any project you do. Same thing. Yes, we would like to have it. We've invested a lot of time and patience in this and a lot of due diligence, but at the same time, going through the processes so we create something that's transcendent of all of us sitting here right now, something that will outlast all of us and something our great grandkids can still walk around and enjoy. So as quickly as possible, but as meaningful as possible.
That's a really good way to put it. The next question is about the how extensive of a public outreach program, I guess, to get a little bit more specific on it. Is it open houses? Is there a public process that you all had in mind?
we haven't had a lot of conversation about it, so I would suggest we would welcome your creativity, right? So yes, it is open houses. And yes, you need to engage the Town Center Advisory Board. Those are critically important first steps. The other ways to do this, if it's setting up a table at a market or some event with the city, or Marley runs a bunch of programs during the summer where people can weigh in. I could imagine a whole range of things. So kind of putting it back to you. Public outreach is not easy. It's something that we all in this metropolitan region used to always talk about, outreach. And I'm not sure I think we're all struggling to figure out how to do it, especially in the post-COVID environment. So we would welcome your input. We would support you as best we can in doing that, but we'd welcome the creativity. Online polling and things like that seem to be a good idea. I forgot the name of the tool, but different types of mapping that people can do online has also been reasonable tools. Then you hear other types of other interesting events where, a community dinner or community whatever. It's just, we would be open to any and all good ideas. Frankly, I think that stuff done correctly goes a real long ways to telling the story, which then builds the community.
Okay.
So we're open, but we do want it.
Got it.
Yeah.
When we did the town center plan, we did like 4 open houses and they were very well attended.
Yeah, that's great. Again, we haven't necessarily selected an architect yet, but I know YBA did a tremendous job at Rockwood. And, we definitely learned a lot from them on that process. From a design standpoint, architecture standpoint, obviously we just have rectangles right now. Are there communities, townhome style projects that you guys specifically want us to keep in mind as precedents?
Design is a matter of opinion and position and all that type of stuff. But I would say, rather than focusing on a specific building, I would say elements that jump out to me is large windows are important. How those windows connect to public and private spaces is important. Semi-public and private space is important. Like, what's the transition from the street to the building? Is there a transition? the ability to distinguish one's front door from the neighbor's front door, and that's the challenges when buildings get too big, where do I live, type of thing. That's obviously a little bit easier accomplished on row houses or smaller products like that, as opposed to an apartment building. You talk about active ground floor. We've heard a lot about also active rooftops. So, again, especially given the views, sustainability would be great, especially if it's sustainability that can be celebrated. So, to me, that's materials. How do we treat stormwater? Stormwater can be treated in a beautiful way, and it can be treated in a way that
It's not.
thank you. That just totally detracts from what was trying to be done.
Right.
We'd like this to be one of those communities like, Aranco or Villebois, where people point to and sort of say, hey, there's this really special place. ULI says, hey, this is a special place. Have you checked out what's happening in Troutdale, type thing?
Yeah.
So don't really have a specific style in mind. I think it's probably useful to think about, what Jordan was saying is that we want to have our own identity. But with doing that, I would say that it's done in a way that sort of reflects and understands traditional forms. So something that's very contemporary, frankly, I might like, the community may not like it the same way. Kind of just, and I know you guys, I know this is in your wheelhouse, but this is thinking about how to do that, So those are things that jump out to me as opposed to saying a specific project.
Yeah,
Folks can
just
jump in.
Yeah, to add to that, for the ground floor level, creating ground floor, like if you do have ground floor multifamily spaces, making sure that they're not, it doesn't feel like you're walking through someone's front yard, getting them in a way so that it feels like it's separated from the public spaces, so that the people who are interacting with the public spaces don't feel like they're intruding on a private space. Building facade articulation is something that comes up a lot around here, which is kind of different than some of the other designs that you guys have worked on in Gresham and whatnot. There seems to be a trend towards early 1900 styles of buildings. Our whole north side of downtown Troutdale was actually built between 1998 and 2002, which a lot of people don't recognize just because it looks older. So, keeping that in mind when styling things.
Yeah, I'm going to add to that one, which is, it's fine to understand the past. We're not asking you to replicate. I'm not asking you to replicate the past. There's ways to do this in a contemporary way that understands that there's a past and that there's a history, type of thing. So,
And complements it. We don't need it to be Disney World.
Right, yeah.
The Harry Potter world.
Oh, there we go. Destination.
Yep.
Do you guys have any more questions? Those are my ones that I written down.
I think that's covers our list. I think we had a pretty good conversation about things.
Yeah. Is there anything we felt like we missed in our conversation? Well, we're really excited about, the fact that we were considered as a finalist, that we've spent the time to meet with you guys, and that you took the time to meet with us. It's a tremendous, opportunity. We love to be your development partner on it. We think we're, extremely well qualified. We're the right partner for this type of thing. These things do evolve, and this is kind of the first step. But what we try to convey here is that this was our idea of what was going to maximize land value in an achievable concept. We're open to modifications, tweaks, changes. This is not, set in stone right now. This is kind of the first conversation, really, we wanted to make sure we represented who we are as a counterparty, and hopefully that came through in this meeting.
Thank you. Yeah, we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be here and presenting a well thought out proposal for us, and taking the time to interview with us. And next step wise, we are reconvening our Town Center Advisory Board to discuss the interviews and evaluations, and they'll be putting forth a ranking to our Urban Renewal Agency, who then would be making the decision on who to move forward with for an exclusive negotiating agreement. So we're hoping that that can, happen within the next month, and that we'll be in touch shortly with more information.
Sounds great.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks for being flexible with your schedules also.
Absolutely.
Good.